Welcome to this YouTube webinar on dyslexia, reading, spelling and vocabulary at second level. My name is Wynne McCormick. It is one in a series of 9 YouTube webinars on dyslexia at second level. I recommend to everybody, be they teachers or parents, that they watch the webinar on how dyslexia affects the student at second level first, so that they can understand the challenges facing the student at second level, and then watch any of the others that they are interested in. As always, in the webinars, when I mention a link, it can be found below the YouTube presentation. Reading is a key skill for students, and it is often a major difficulty for the student with dyslexia and can present in different ways. In the next few slides, I'm outlining some of the difficulties the student may have with reading. To start with, poor phonological processing. They find it hard to relate letter sounds to letter shapes, and it leads to poor word attack skills. They may read slowly without fluency and then have to reread to get the meaning. As a result, they are slower than others in the class in reading tasks. They may decode and read every word on the page, but when they come to the end, they have no idea of what they've read. All their efforts went into reading each word, and then the comprehension is lost. They may make mistakes with small words and endings that can change the meaning of what they've read. I remember the story of a student once who misread the word flaw for flow in a question, and as a result wrote off the point. They may transpose words. He stood under the clock and he understood the clock is an example. They can misread or mispronounce common words, maybe like hospital for hospital. Since they don't read for pleasure, they have a poor vocabulary. And this can mean that when they come to long words, they jump over words that they don't recognise, and that affects comprehension. And then comprehension and understanding of what they read might be poor. When they're tired and stressed, the difficulties may increase. They also may be reluctant readers and avoid reading, and in particular, reading aloud in class. Their reading can become much worse when they're reading in front of others. One suggestion I think is lovely is that they could read to their dog or cat at home. There's no pressure in that situation and their reading is more fluent. They may find it hard to scan or skim text, which makes making key notes more difficult. Technical language such as science or archaic language such as historical documents or Shakespearean plays can pose difficulties. English has so many words that have several meanings. For example, the word plot, and I give examples of it here, and then so many words with the same pronunciation which are spelt differently. And a poor memory for names or details or sequences can make comprehension more difficult. My experience as a teacher is that a mixed ability first year class could have a wide range of reading ages, maybe from 10 to 15. And then within a group of students with dyslexia, there can be a huge variation. Some can read exceptionally well, and the dyslexia may show in other ways like spelling or memory, and then others struggle enormously with reading. Here's an example of what text can look like when you have difficulties reading. It is an extract from the JCSP book, Between the Lines, showing the reading of a student 2 years behind the level of the textbook. Here the student is jumping over the words they don't know, and that's affecting comprehension. Here's the passage with no gaps in it, and the comparison between the two shows how difficult it can be for some. This is a video that I use extracts from very frequently when I'm giving in-service. It's called Fat City, How Difficult Can This Be? The FAT stands for frustration, anxiety and tension. It puts parents, teachers, psychologists into the situation where they experience what it's like to be dyslexic inside a classroom. It is very old, and you'll see that immediately from the clothes and the hairstyles, and then they use some words we wouldn't use today, such as learning disabled. But however, it does make you walk in the steps of someone who has dyslexia. It is 60 minutes long with 12 sections. I've given the link. 2 sections deal with reading. One is reading comprehension, about 23 minutes in, and the second is on reading and decoding. I'd recommend that you take the time to watch it. I frequently recommend the book Dyslexia in Secondary School by Cogan and Flecker. It is a book packed with practical strategies and resources, including some photocopyable resources. One section on reading has a checklist of the warning signs of reading difficulties, and it might be useful to you. It is on sale from outside the box. So in this webinar, I'm going to look at strategies that would help with reading under the following headings: phonics, vocabulary, a dyslexia-friendly style, reading comprehension, readability of texts, reading development and assistive technology. If the student has very poor phonic attack skills, there are two resources that might be able to help: Toe by Toe and TTRS. Toe by Toe is a highly structured phonics-based manual to help people who find reading difficult. This includes students with dyslexia. It requires maybe 15 minutes a day of coaching, and you see improvements very quickly. It can be used by parents or by teachers. The first pages start with the letters of A, B, C, etc. Here's a page in the middle of it. Can the students say these words? And then it continues. By the end of it, you're up to words like auspicious and fallacious and pretentious, etc. TTRS is a multisensory, structured, online typing program. It is based on a phonic method called alpha to omega. It is designed to help with reading and spelling and writing difficulties, dysgraphia, typing, literacy, and memory, as well as having touch typing at the end of it, and it's available from the libraries. And now moving on with vocabulary. The first resource here is from the Special Needs Information Press, SNP, which is based in the UK. It is a list of words that would be needed for the secondary school curriculum. It includes words that often contribute to reading hesitation and are irregular. That means that they're not phonic. It can be used on a one-to-one basis or with groups. The second resource I've got here is a game called Thrugs. It is a resource that allows students make progress with spelling and reading through phonic-based card games. Another resource for vocabulary is ELSIP, the English Language Support Programme. It was set up in the noughties for the teachers of students whose first language was not English. In all the subjects listed below, it has huge resources with lists of the key vocabulary in all the subjects, as well as exercises and worksheets. One reservation I have about it is that the Junior Cert resources are based on the old Junior Cert, so there's a slight mismatch here. I show two extracts from ELSIP here. One is an extract from the chapter on the history of art, and the second is on home economics. Encourage the student to keep a vocabulary notebook for each subject. Some words can change their meaning from subject to subject. When teachers introduce a new word in class, they should write it on the board and divide it into syllables. Otherwise, it's a bit like white noise and can pass the student's perception past, and the student won't be able to remember how to say it. They could put it into their vocabulary notebook this way. Also, a useful exercise is sometimes to show words divided into the root word and prefixes and suffixes, and how words grow. Latin and Greek are very helpful in vocabulary development two ways. Firstly, to get them to understand the unusual plurals. Here, I give you a challenge. Could you fill all the gaps here easily and confidently? On the Study Skills workshop for senior cycle students, which I ran for many years, I would ask the group the plural of fungus. And some of them might know it's fungi, but for the most part, they felt there was just chaos out there. They knew you added S to make a plural and sometimes ES, and then you had very unusual ones. And then I would show them the table of the 9 plurals coming from Latin and Greek and point out that the bottom one is US and it turns to I, so fungus becomes fungi. The second from the bottom is so bacterium becomes bacteria. This made sense to them, and in particular they need it for Leaving Cert Biology, where there are so many Latin and Greek words. Up to 70% of English words come from Latin and Greek roots. Knowing these roots is particularly valuable to the student with dyslexia for 2 reasons. Firstly, they learn best when they can see patterns and understand what they are learning. Secondly, many don't read for pleasure and as a result do not have an extensive vocabulary. As a result, they often come across words they don't recognise. Giving them an understanding of the Latin and Greek roots helps them to see how a word is constructed, how to pronounce it, how to guess at its meaning, and as a tool to help with spelling it. For example, the use of the word side means kill or killing, and so it's easier to find the meaning of words such as homicide, infanticide and herbicide, etc. There are many sites that give resources on Latin and Greek roots for words, and one of them is Reading Rockets, and I give the link here. This is another site, the Florida Center for Reading Research. It has games on these roots with instructions and worksheets on how to play the games. Here I give a link to one of the sites that gives Latin and Greek roots for biology. There is so much new vocabulary in every class of biology, and so much of it is based on Latin and Greek. The roots help. Now turning to a dyslexia-friendly style. It can help with reading to have text in a dyslexia-friendly style, and here are 3 sites and their links. The Dyslexia Association and their guidelines for inclusive communication, Call Scotland and their guidelines on good practice for a text, and the British Dyslexia Association article on typefaces. The DAA guidelines are short, they're 3 pages long, and they make the following suggestions. Reading style. Okay, for reading style, short sentences, avoiding abbreviations and acronyms, short words and terms where possible, avoiding jargon. Under presentation, they suggest 1.5 line spacing with wide margins, justified text, bold print to highlight rather than italics and underlining, bullet points rather than prose. A font should be sans serif, such as Calibri, Arial, Veranda, with a minimum size of 12 or 14. Avoid unnecessary use of capitals, and have increased space between letters, and then perhaps coloured cream or off-white paper or matte paper might help. The Call Scotland guidelines goes into it in greater depth than the DAI guidelines, which are only 3 pages long. The Call Scotland's is 80 pages long, and it gives extensive suggestions and examples. Here are 2 pages from it showing how to make worksheets clearer. The British Dyslexia Association make suggestions about typefaces. They suggest there should be, first of all, good ascenders and descenders, that letters that go above and below the line are well marked and distinguished. That B, D, Q and P should have different shapes and not be mirror images of each other. That the capital I, lowercase l and the digit 1 would be distinguished, and that there would be plenty of letter spacing so letters don't run into each other. There are fonts designed specifically for people with dyslexia. Here are 2. They follow the BDA guidelines on typefaces. Open Dyslexia is free to download, although they do appreciate donations. Chrome extension gives the option that people could read websites in Dyslexia font. Visual stress is a perceptual processing condition that causes reading difficulties, headaches and visual problems such as exposure to patterns in text, such as lines of text. Sufferers experience some print distortion maybe and fatigue when reading. What can help with visual stress are some of the following. Rulers with translucent colours and a black line, which helps keep the eye on the line being read, or colour overlays, or coloured writing materials. Individuals may have a preference for the colour that helps most. Here are some of the suppliers for this type of equipment for visual stress. ABC School Supplies in Letterkenny, Eason's and Mr Price have coloured A4 pads. I noticed this year for the first time that Eason's has a dyslexia-friendly school supplies section on their website, and Crossbow Education in the UK. A good few years ago, a colleague and myself undertook to check the readability of the Junior Cert textbooks. It was an arduous process where we had to count the number of syllables in words and the number of words in sentences, and then do a big mathematical calculation. And we found the majority of Junior Cert textbooks had a reading age of 14 or 15. Most students in first year at the age of 12 will be challenged by this, but in particular the students with dyslexia. Things have changed now. If you want to check the readability of a textbook, go to Microsoft 2010 and later, go to File, Options, Proofing, tick Readability Statistics, now enter 4 to 5 paragraphs from the textbook, do a spelling check, and after the spelling check, the readability statistic will come up. It is an American score. Here is a link for the SNP newsletter, where there is an article on readability tests, and they convert scores to UK scores, which is easier for us to understand. Turning to reading comprehension, and here's a list of resources that will help with reading comprehension, and I'll go through them in the following slides. The SQ3R is one of a number of reading methods, but it's probably in the top 3. It's based on the concept that comprehension is improved if you're already in the zone before you start to read something. So it says when you're asked to read a piece, first of all, S, survey it, look at the headings, the subheadings, the pictures, the last paragraph to get a general concept of what it's about. Then Q, raise questions about what it's about and the information it has. Then move on to the first R and read it. The second door is at the end, after finishing reading, answer the questions that you've raised. And this will help get information into long-term memory. And then later, the third door is where you come back and review what you have learned. This is a reading method that could be used as a life skill and in college and in work. Visualization is another method to help with comprehension and memory. This is where we see what we are reading as pictures in our head. We could go as far as drawing the pictures of the storyline or the key images in a poem, etc. Cogan and Flecker, in their book Dyslexia in Secondary School, have a very good section on it with examples. Digital copies of textbooks are very useful, where the text can be read aloud as the student reads it. And this leads me to the amazing resource of Bookshare Ireland, set up by Vision Ireland, formerly the NCBI, and the Department of Education. It has 1.3 million books available in alternative formats for people with vision or print difficulties. Print difficulties is dyslexia, so students with dyslexia have access to this huge resource. Alternative formats could include audio or audio with highlighting of the key words or larger fonts, and textbooks are now available through it. The SRA Reading Laboratory is a carefully structured system that helps learners develop independent reading skills and fluency and confidence. While it's available online, I'm going to use a picture of the SRA box to explain it. There are different boxes depending on the age and the reading ability of the students. For example, in this box there may be 12 sections. Each of the colours have 12 comprehension pieces at a particular reading level. The box could start with a reading age of maybe 11 in the front and go the whole way to the back with a reading age of 17. The teacher allocates a particular colour to the student, knowing their reading ability. They then take one of the passages and work independently in class. At the end of it, they can go to the box and get the answer and correct their own work. All the students in the class are working independently at their own correct reading level. The teacher is available to support the students around the class as needs be. Here's an idea that a teacher once gave me on one of the courses I ran. English for Everyone has extensive resources for all sorts of English worksheets. If you look at my first list, you'll see the headings. But I'm going to look at particularly reading comprehension. And in the middle it shows that it has passages for reading comprehension from level 1 to level 12. And the passages are there, multiple choice questions and answers. The teacher used it somewhat like an SRA kit. She copied comprehensive passages at different grades, laminated them, and used them like she would an SRA box. I love this site. The archaic language of Shakespearean plays can be difficult for the student with dyslexia. Here in Lit Charts, you have the Shakespearean English on one side of the page, and then on the other side you have a modern English translation. Again, another resource for helping with reading comprehension. The Twinkle site has differentiated comprehension exercises on the same topic at 3 different levels. I give examples here. The JCSP has extensive resources. Some literacy and numeracy ones are downloadable at link 13. They include workbooks and some novels that will be used for Junior Cert, and this would facilitate differentiated learning. And then you can buy other JCSP resources for numeracy and literacy at the Blackrock Education Centre. I have already mentioned this JCSP book, Between the Lines, and I'm mentioning it again here. It's available to download, the link is given. It is for literacy across all subjects of the Junior Cert. And just look at the table of contents and you'll see that there are so many helpful strategies to help with comprehension and reading and writing in it. To help students develop their reading skills, some of the ideas below might help. Encourage them to read at home, maybe for 15 minutes a day. It will help develop reading speed, stamina, comprehension and vocabulary. I would have done this with my lads, and I know that had they not read at stages during the summer, their reading skills would have gone back considerably. And reading is such an important skill. If they find reading in class stressful, do they have to read it aloud in class? But MacKay, in his book, Removing Dyslexia as a Barrier to Achievement, suggests that the student could have a reading pass and they could use it to avoid the reading tasks. Then, when they feel more confident, they themselves could make the decision to read. If there is an occasion where they may have to read aloud, give advance notice so they can practice it and even mark their words into syllables. It might be helpful if parents participate in paired reading. A link here is given to a NEPS handout on paired reading. When reading textbooks, they should read actively, using highlighters and colours to mark points. Graphic novels and comic books could be a way to get them more involved in reading. Audiobooks is a way to make books that they may not be reading accessible to them, so they can join in with their peers in understanding stories like Harry Potter, and parents could use them perhaps on car journeys. Some are free, and I list some of those sites, and then some are the commercial sites. High-low readers help. These are books with adolescent content with a lower reading age. They can have a great sense of achievement when they finish a book. Here are two places to access high-low readers. Barrington Stokes specialise in dyslexia-friendly books, and I show some of their titles here, such as Animal Farm or Little Woman. And then Penguin have graded readers at 8 different levels. Dyslexia Action in the UK have these two booklets which can be downloaded, and I give the links. One is Dive In, a guide to choosing children's books for reluctant readers and readers with dyslexia, and the second is Reading Hints and Tips for parents of reluctant and struggling readers. When students find it hard to make their own notes, revision books are a great help. Some of them are more accessible than others. I would look for bullet points, numbering of points, less text, highlighting of keywords and concepts, colour and diagrams, bigger print, dyslexia-friendly fonts, and plenty of space on the page. I particularly like that last one there, the Essentials Uncovered, where they have the 3 sciences done as a revision book. This is the NEPS Good Practice Guide for teachers on effective interventions for struggling readers, the second edition in 2019, and it's downloadable, and I give the link. As you look through the interventions, you will note that I've already mentioned many of them in this webinar, such as toe by toe, SNP, SRA, and paired reading. Assistive technology is of great help. I start with the reading pen, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with because it's now allowed in exams as a reasonable accommodation. It also is available through the library service. How Do You Say is a website, and if you don't know how to pronounce a word, you put the word in and it'll tell you how to say it. Immersive Reader on Microsoft will change the font, the background colour, the size of the font, the spacing, the eye focus, and read aloud for you. Then the Dyslexia Association of Ireland, I give the link to 2 places. One is their page on assistive technology, and the second is on their YouTube webinars, where some of those webinars demonstrate the use of assistive technology. And the British Dyslexia Association also have information on assistive technology. This is a poster from Calls Scotland. It starts with a statement, I have a pupil with reading difficulties. And then it goes on to give ideas about what might help, starting with where do their difficulties come from? Have you used these reading interventions? Have you tried these adaptations? Have you tried other types of reading material? This brings this webinar to a conclusion. I hope you found it useful and the strategies and resources will be of help to you.